Pat was relaxing at home, enjoying a glass of whiskey, when he received a text. He opened it up, and there was a photo of his wife and daughter and son tied to a chair. He froze in fear. It had written underneath, "Look under your bed. There is a burner phone attached to the left side. There is one number programmed into it. When that number rings, there will be instructions on how you can stop your family getting executed. If you go to the police, your family will be dead, so don't try anything stupid." A few minutes later, Pat had retrieved the burner phone from under his bed. He wondered should he call the number before receiving a call. He decided to call it, but there was no answer. A few seconds later, he received a message. It read, "I told you, when the number rings, there will be instructions. Don't call this number again." Pat was wondering, should he call the police, but decided not to. It must be some maniac has his family. What sort of sane person would do something like this, he told himself. A few minutes later, the phone rang. The voice on the other end said, "Hello, Pat. You will have one chance to let your family live. If you mess up that chance, then you can kiss goodbye to your family, and you will never ever see them alive again. There is no GPS in this phone, but put in the following address I text you into your GPS tracking on your own phone, and you will be able to have your chance of saving your family. Remember, don't go to the police. If you do go to the police, I can guarantee you right now that your family will not survive an hour after you telling the police." Now, we're not going to waste any time, so you can come to the address I message you as soon as you receive it, which should be right after I hang up. The phone went dead, and sure enough, a few seconds later, an address was sent to the burner phone. Pat put the address into his GPS tracking device and jumped in his car and went there. The address was an old, unused warehouse outside of town. He wondered was his family kept captive inside. As soon as he parked the car, the burner phone rang. "Hello, Pat. The door is open and will lock when you are inside. Walk in. I'll stay on the phone." As soon as Pat was inside the door, it banged and locked behind him, and the man spoke again. "Well, Pat, you might see an ordinary looking room with different things around it and dots on the ground. Well, Pat, you are going to play a special game I designed myself, which is called Join the Dots. I was inspired by the classic game Join the Dots, hence the reason I have dots on the ground. You have to walk from each dot to the end of the room. Different things will happen you as you step on each dot. I will tell you what they are just before you step on each dot. But remember, Pat, don't try to do this fast. You will know why soon. Well, the first dot, Pat, when you pass it, there is going to be a burst of fire pop up from the floor. Also, I almost forgot, you don't have to finish any of these dots, and you won't be harmed in any way if you don't even complete the first one. But on the other hand, your family will be all executed by being shot in the head. Now, to make it even more exciting, there is a time limit. If you don't get it done in the time limit, which is 2 minutes, then you can forget about ever seeing your family alive again. Well, the game begins now. Pat was in shock with what was happening. He shouted into the phone, "You sick bastard, leave my family alone." The man said, "Pat, Drop your phone, you don't need it. I can speak through the speakers now. You have enough on your plate besides holding a phone. By the way, Pat, the time is ticking. Pat walked fast towards the dot, and when he stepped on it, a large burning flame went up through his body and ended so fast he hadn't even caught on fire. He was walking towards the next dot, and a voice spoke. This dot is going to release nails under your feet, long enough to make you feel a lot of pain, trust me. Pat stepped on the dot and screamed in pain when 2 large nails went right through his feet. He walked on towards the other dot. There was only one more after that. He could do it, he told himself. The man said, the next dot, Pat, will be shards of glass forced out a chute right towards you for a few seconds. Pat walked on the dot, and shards came flying at him for what seemed like hours, but were only seconds. He reached the final dot, and wondered what it was. He was told, this is going to be a surprise, Pat. There will be 2 holes, just big enough for you to put your arms through. Just roll up your sleeves and put them through. Pat put his arms through it, hoping for it to be over. He was in fear that he was going to get his arms cut right off, but suddenly he felt a needle prick his arm. Then he felt like floating on air. He heard the voice say, Now, Pat, I can't get my daughter back, but this makes me feel a little better. You might ask why the dots? Why join the dots? Well, I'll tell you why. Why? Because of all the dots from needle marks, or train tracks as they call them, in my deceased daughter's arms, from your drugs you pumped her with, and so many other people. Well, now you're going to feel what it's like to be in pain. I wondered should I give you enough till you overdose, but I had a better idea. I wanted you to experience a high before the low. You're high as a kite now, I know, but when you come down, when you come out of the clouds, you will be able to see the pain you have caused. You're going to wake up to your family dead from your poison. You see, Pat, each dot you stepped on, a person injected your poison into your family, and I'm sure they were dead by the second one. Well, on their way, but very good you did 4. And good for me that it takes time for them to die. Do you remember I said you would never see your family alive again if you didn't step on the dots? I meant it. You will see your family alive. The wall raised and Pat could see his family tied to a chair, slipping more and more out of this world, with needles stuck in their arm. He knew within minutes or seconds they would be dead. The man said, Now you know what your poison does to people's families. Rachel was enjoying her summer holidays, but had to save up for her college fees for going back to college. Last summer Rachel worked in a bar and enjoyed it, but since this summer had a lockdown and most of the bars and all the clubs were shut, she had no choice of securing bar work this summer. It was when she was in her friend's house one night that her friend Susie recommended the platform OnlyFans. Rachel first thought it was a disgusting, sleazy site, but had to admit the way Susie was telling her about it seemed appetizing, and the best selling point was she could make a ton of money from the comfort of her own home. Within a week, Rachel set up lights in her bedroom. She already had them anyway, as she used to blog a lot on social media, but never ever thought she would be doing such dirty photos, etc. She posted a few sexy photos, but nothing too explicit. Within a week, she was delighted to see that her followers were going up, and the first month she had made over 1,000 euros. After a while, she started posting exclusive content for her followers who would pay more, and she even got tips for no extra content. One night she received a very creepy message from a guy that paid her to pretend to slit her throat with a knife. She had an open mind at this stage, but still found it very creepy, a guy asking her to get a knife and pretend to slit her throat. The man got very pushy, saying he would pay more money if she did it, and he wouldn't take a no for an answer. So she just spoke a little bit more and then blocked him. That night, Rachel was walking her usual walk she used to do around the block in the evening when she heard a noise. She thought it might have just been a dog or a cat, but looked anyway. There was nothing there. She kept walking until she heard it again. This time she froze, wondering, could someone be actually following her? Suddenly a man appeared and she jumped. Then she screamed when she saw a man pull out a knife and put it to her throat. He said, "You stupid little bitch." Rachel was thankful she took karate classes when she defended herself and was able to knock the knife from the man's hand. Then she knocked the man to the ground and grabbed the knife and held it to his throat. He was smiling, and that made her blood boil. She picked his skin, and there was blood. Then there was more blood as she stuck it in more. He told her, "Okay, that's enough, babe. I loved that roleplay. I am absolutely so turned on." Rachel then said, "I am turned on more, knowing that I am going to add a little extra to your roleplay. I am going to actually cut your freaking throat for real." With that, Rachel sliced the man's throat open. The next day, she was looking through her phone to see what messages or tips she got on her OnlyFans, but she was surprised when she saw a DM from the man that she blocked. She wondered, 1, how could she get a message from someone she blocked? And 2, how can she receive a message from someone she know she left absolutely dead? She opened the message, and there was a link to a video. She clicked on it and saw a video of her slicing the man's throat. It was the CCTV footage, but she made sure there was no camera. No, it couldn't have been CCTV footage. It must have been someone filming her. But who? She froze to death when she saw what happened. When she walked away, the man had vanished into thin air. Suddenly she turned around when she felt like someone blowing into her neck. The man was staring right into her eyes and said, "You shouldn't have took it that far. All those creeps on that horrible app are just a bunch of losers. I am your only fan, worth anything, and you just let me die." Rachel was trying to figure out what was happening. Suddenly, she woke up from a nightmare. It all came flooding back to her now, her killing the man. She wondered how she turned into a cold-blooded killer just over a few strange roleplay requests. Suddenly her phone rang. Susie said, "Rachel, you wouldn't believe what this crazy guy paid me 100,000 euro for last night. He was completely nuts. He claimed to have some power to turn any idea into a reality. Would you believe that? He said to me make up some horror story about OnlyFans about my best friend. I told him some wild crazy story that a guy messaged you to play a roleplay game, to him go to stab you and then you really stab him and then you would have a nightmare after it that the guy actually came back to life. Can you imagine he actually paid me 100,000 euros for that, for some crazy stupid little story. I am extremely proud of myself for the ending. It really seemed to get him off. Rachel couldn't comprehend what she was hearing and asked Susie, how did her story end? Susie said, he came back to life really, and first slit your throat, then teleported himself, or whatever, to slit mine. With that, the girls' phones were lying on the ground in a pool of blood, with them lying dead. Sharon was looking for a place to rent, and she spent hours and hours looking through different rooms and apartments. The prices were way out of her budget. She felt like she would have to have a super high-paying job to even pay the rent, don't mind the cost of living on top of that. She kept looking at different houses, and there was a great choice. But that great choice came with an even greater price, and not greater as in value, but greater as in a very high price. She was about to give up when she had to look twice to see was she seeing things, or were her eyes playing tricks on her from staring at the screen for so long. There was a really nice apartment complex in what looked like a lovely neighbourhood near where she wanted to rent. What caught her eye was rent a room and a living room plus use of swimming pool, entirely free in this beautiful spacious house in a beautiful neighbourhood. You will be able to stay indefinitely, but just need to take part in a training session to help finding ways of bettering ourselves through a modern day type of experimental wellness therapy. When she scrolled down to the bottom of the page, under the photo of the complex, it had written in bold red writing, "If interested, please reply as soon as possible, as there is only a few positions to be filled." The complex can hold plenty people, as it has more than 30 spacious bedrooms and leisure rooms, etc. But apply right away if interested, before spaces are gone. Sharon didn't even begin to consider not applying when she had already clicked on the button below which said apply now. She filled in all the information and was delighted when she got a reply back saying, "Thank you for applying to stay in the wellness mansion. You just have started the journey to changing your life, to bring out the best in you." Sharon wondered what exactly did the experimental wellness therapy mean, but she guessed it couldn't mean anything bad. A week later, Sharon was in her new room in the wellness mansion. She felt like being in a posh hotel. Her room had a TV and was decorated beautifully. She was lying in her bed relaxing, scrolling through Instagram on her phone when a man entered. He smiled and said, "Hello Sharon, and good evening to you. Welcome to the Wellness Mansion. You must have read what it said on the site about this being the first step of your journey to becoming a better you. And that is true. But that phone you were just looking at, I'm afraid, has to go. You will not have to worry about food or any bills, just as once you 100% apply yourself to this therapy. Sharon said, well, I'm afraid I need my phone, as I have to stay up to date with all my social media feeds. But don't worry, I won't be on my phone all the time. The man said, I'm very sorry, dear. I need your phone right now, or else I'm afraid you need to exit this wellness mansion and make room for someone who will apply themselves fully to our rules. Sharon felt a pang of fear and dread, wondering what he meant by apply themselves fully to our rules. Suddenly she feared she just made a terrible mistake coming to the wellness mansion. A few hours later, the same man came into her room and said, okay dear, we will be doing the first test run of what's to come. You might think this is a bit of real heavy work and feel like not even trying, but if you do, then I'm afraid you will not be able to live in this wonderful house rent-free. But if you do apply yourself to this very, very simple test, then you, my dear, will be qualified to stay here, and we will teach you to be the best version of you. What Sharon was told to do was do exercise until an alarm went off. She was given different exercises and thought it would be just a few minutes, but she nearly passed out a few times as each exercise went on for what seemed like hours. Each time the alarm went off, she just had a few minutes to organise what she needed for the next one and had to do the exercise non-stop until the alarm went off. After the last alarm went, the man entered Sharon's room and clapped, saying, well done, my dear. You did absolutely fabulous. You now have full use of this house. The next day, Sharon was walking down the hall when a man said to her, hello, how are you doing? Sharon said, I'm great, thanks. I'm a bit stressed though about what I was made do last night. The man's pleasant expression changed, and he grabbed Sharon by the throat and said, don't complain. You don't know how good you have it. Just do what you're told, and if not, then you will suffer. But on the other hand, if you do what you're told, you will gain more than happiness. You will gain euphoria. Sharon was shaking with fear after the man said what he said. He let go of her, and she ran back into her room and shut the door. She shook in fear, realizing that there was no bolt in the inside to lock herself in. The next day, she was made do extreme exercises for hours and hours, and when she told them she wanted to go home, a man gave her a phone to scroll through the photos and said, that is what happened the last person who wanted to go home. She nearly got sick when she saw different photos of a person being brutally tortured in different ways. There was a weird red siren in the background where the man was being tortured. She asked what was the siren there for. The man said, thanks for showing interest. Well, just put it this way. Hopefully you will never see that siren go red and flash, because if you do, then that's the end of you. Suddenly Sharon got her fork and stuck it in the man's eye while she stuck the knife in his neck and ran out the door. She was feeling lucky that no one was in the hall to stop her, and before she knew it, luckily she was outside, safe in the street. She ran across the road and an elderly lady said, oh my goodness dear, what's wrong? Please come in dear. Sharon was shouting, help me, call the police, please call the police, and was about to go in the door when she saw something in the window of the woman's house. It was a red siren. The man's words came flooding back to her. Hopefully she will never see the siren flash, because if she did, it was the end of her. Sharon had realized the woman must have been one of them. She ran down the street, but as she ran, she noticed on every single window, in every single house, there was a red siren flash. She panicked as she was surrounded by people all over the street, and she knew there was no escape. It was a Friday night and I was scrolling through my phone when I opened the TikTok app. I scrolled through it, then noticed I had a message. I opened the message and it was from a guy called Frank. He said, "You were looking beautiful at the mall today." I blocked him instantly as I felt a shiver run up my spine. I just put it down to some creep trying to freak me out, so I didn't pay much more attention to it. The next day I was in the mall with my friends, and we were just walking after coming down the escalator when a man was standing in front of me as I got off. I said, "Excuse me," very politely. He turned around and said, "I'm very sorry for blocking you. Please pass." His words, "very sorry for blocking you," sounded so creepy. It felt as if he was the guy who had sent me the message last night. But how could that be? I told my friends, and they agreed it all sounded a bit creepy the way he worded it. I was hoping it was just a coincidence. That night when I went home, I received another message, which must have been the same guy. This time he said, "You shouldn't have blocked me." He must have set up a new account to just send me that. I jumped when I suddenly heard a noise outside my door. There was a piece of wood stuck up against it, with "You're blocked" written on it. I was shaking with fear and went to my window to try to get out, but I knew it was too high, and when I looked down, I could see the man below from the mall staring right up at me. I rang the police and stayed in my room until they came. When they arrived, the wood was gone from my door, and the man was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't understand the wood disappearing from my door. Then suddenly I woke up. Everything was dark. I know now what woke me. It was my phone. I answered it and could hear a man's voice. As I was saying, "You shouldn't have blocked me," I screamed, "Let me out, let me out." The man said, "There is a straw in your coffin underground. I will be taking that straw out in just under 5 minutes. There had been oxygen pumped into your coffin, but when that's gone, I'm afraid you're on your own. But I threw you a lifeline. I sent your friend a message on TikTok, telling her where you are. If they're a real friend, they will find their way here to save you. But then again, they will need to bring a shovel, etc. So the time is ticking. Tick tock, tick tock," he said in a very creepy voice. Then there was silence. What seemed like an hour later, I could hear police sirens, and I thanked God my friend had rang them and got here on time. I was afraid after that to ever go on TikTok again. The man's voice rang in my ears. Tick tock, tick tock.